Um, this is a moment of joy, but also of sadness because of the passing away of Richard Sanderell, beloved poet in your community whom I do not know. But in a way I do, because we all are members of, poets community. And I'd like to begin my reading by reading the last few stanzas of In Memory of W.B. Yeats by Auden as a tribute to Sanderell. Follow, poet, follow right to the bottom of the night. With your unconstraining voice, still persuade us to rejoice. With the farming of a verse, make a vineyard of the curse. Sing of human unsuccess in a rapture of distress. In the deserts of the heart, let the healing fountain start. In the prison of his days, teach the free man how to praise. It was so beautiful the way your lines and your emotions brought this particular poet to life. So thank you for sharing your beautiful poems on him. The second poem I'd like to share with you is by a poet called Reginald Dwayne Betts. He's an American poet, and the poem is called Prison. I want to share this with you because I find in his poetry is all about the resilience of the human spirit. And he is both a prose writer as well as a poet. His memoir is called A Question of Freedom. And this is about the story of a young man confined in the worst prisons in the state of Virginia. And I'm reading from his website. He transformed himself from a 16-year-old kid sentenced to 9 years in prison to a critically acclaimed writer and graduate of the Yale Law School. And he's written 3 acclaimed collections of poetry. So very powerful poet. Prison is the sinner's bouquet, house of shredded and torn, Dear John letters, upended grave of names, moon, black kiss of a pistol's flat side, time blue born, and threaded into a curse, Lazarus of hustlers, the picayune, spinning into beatdowns, breath of a thief stilled by fluorescent lights, a system of 40 blocks, empty vials, a handful of purple cranes' bills, memories of crates suspended from stairs, tied in knots around street lamps, the house of unending push-ups, wheelbarrows and walking 20s, the daughters chasing their father's shadows, sons that upset the wind with their secrets, the paraphrase of fractured, scarred wings flying through smoke, each wild hour of lockdown, hunger time, and the blackened flower. After my reading, I will put in the links to the poem and where you can find it. The next poem I'd like to read is a poem I wrote when I was really young, as a teenager. It's the first poem called The Invitation to the Count in my debut collection called First Fire. I wrote this when I, saw the Dracula film through a Viewmaster, and I wanted to be the bride of Dracula after that. Believe it or not, I still do. So, an invitation to the Count. He won't need to open the door. The myth of smoke will come in through the keyhole. The willing victim will not feel your presence. Smothered in your black cloak, she will become like you, invisible in the night. I'll know when I imbibe your heat, roast in my flush, gaze at the fading impressions you leave on my flesh. You're immodest, You mesmerize, your fangs suck the venom, death. You're called the undead. That means you have life. Seal the missing link while her neck is arched. Take what you miss, the silk and surrender of your gothic cage. Tonight she'll play dead. Tonight rise from your grave. She knows you the way you know the taste of blood. She knows you won't hide your claws, the unclenching, clenching fists, mock your chivalry, feign your desire, shield your bloodshot eyes, humble your bursting brain that saw and stored the wisdom of centuries. Leave the dark alleys, the howling, the crawling on walls. Stand straight on earth, a heretic from hell. Proclaim blood as your life force, and that you'll kill, but not stumble upon my worth. In freshly shed blood on white ceremonial sheets. You're a beast with dignity, you must know. Veins burst beneath the skin at the throat for your nocturnal tattoo to change me in my sleep. Come, quote your price. How many bowls of blood for eternity till trapped in your kiss, my soul is set free. The next poem is from the same collection and it's called First Fire. It's a signature poem. Um, this is the experience which Dan alluded to. It's of a spiritual nature, and this is many of my poems talk about the goddess. And this is one of them. It's called First Fire. Mother, for the first time in 20 years, I spoke your language and made it mine. But that was not the only miracle. Do you know it was at Kali Ghat that I finally found myself? I drew closer to you as the chanting rose, and then knew it was not just the hymn, but you that was older than the earth. We were not two, but three women locked in one embrace. You, I, Kali. I shrank into her bleeding toe and came back to life. My body that lay scattered in shrines was suddenly yoked by longing. I don't know who honored whose right. All I know is this, that mother, you have lived in me like a child. Now you rise in me like the earth's first fire. I had this experience in Toronto in 1994, but I've transposed it to Calcutta in India, a place I visited a month later, because experience was that of the divine feminine. So for that reason. My next poem is the last poem in the same collection, the debut collection called Sap is My Heritage. Things that cannot be seen belong to me. Ether of invisibility takes me closer to you, Lord. The gap between the high roof of your church and I is the ladder of flame that lifts the ash I call my body. I am what the tree cannot contain and therefore exudes. Touched by the fragrant air, I harden into being. Slowly dying, I am only a possibility. Finally, round and bulbous and unbreathing, I come to be. Sap is my heritage. The next poem I will read is called Plants Rewrite History. And it's from my the new collection, Another Nirvana. But because the print is kind of small, I've got it on my laptop, so I'll be reading from here. Plants rewrite history. Eyeless and without a yawn, we still see the dawn breaking. Our chlorophyll has never slept since the earth began. Move over, two-legged man, and see that we are the first pagans, raising our arms to the blazing sun, eating sweet mouthfuls of earth. Our every meal is a prayer, is a meal. Have you ever heard a scratching sound on the pages in our bark, watched how the soundless calligraphy of creepers verges onto a word? In your church, why do you never sing the mystery of our bark that is your flesh, our sap that is your blood? Oh, our kingdom reigns yet in coal and oil and every seed, and the fossils that lie beneath the sea. Once we danced upon the earth, but for you we stood still, became motionless between sky and earth, so that you could move and dream. While you crowned yourself with thorns, our toes turned into roots, shuddered, and were still. O sleeping, heaving, million-eyed beast, so blind he will never see, so now we reveal. Prometheus was not a man, but we. We stole the fire of the sun, shooting it as sap through our 100-armed history into your dazed open mouth. And you suddenly opened your eyes and forged a wheel. So I wrote this sometime in the 90s or early 90s, I think before plants in the plant kingdom became heroes on the planet, before ecological consciousness. And I think it has a lot to do with me being a student of botany before I switched to English literature. So a lot of the botanical stuff and kind of creeps in to my poems. Um, my next poem is a more recent one, and it's called When You Played Your Flute. When you played your flute, the prison of my being opened. I walked through parting doors upon doors of clouds made of heaven. When you played your flute, my heart was the pagoda flower that bloomed on the highest plateau. When you played your flute, the air in the third floor of Drepung Losling sighed, thinking of our paths that almost crossed. When you played your flute, I remembered how our heroes' souls were sent out of Bardo land on separate arduous journeys to deserve the gift of our meeting. When you played your flute, I saw Tibet through your eyes and wondered, could I be your Tibet? The next poem speaks for itself. It's called Immigration Take Two, and it's a companion poem to Immigration Take One. I immigrated to Canada in 1991, but I wrote this just 2 years back. Because the poem is reflective, reflects on my experience of immigration. It's from this collection, Another Nirvana. Consider this: opening your eyes one morning to find parrots on mango trees replaced by snow on pine, the yelling of a street hawker silenced by the white noise of a washing machine. People think an immigrant's past is dead. Friend, your past is no less a memory than mine. My so-called past is simply another place. The native land still exists in another time zone, rotating around our same solar system, offering the temptation of a mooring till the new land is home. Immigration, a cremation ground you frequent in your memories to witness your own death. Arrival is a resurrection, a living body rearranging the geography of its veins and the pathways of the heart, spreading itself thin as paper for wind and snow to script. The next poem I'm reading is, I call them my 1994 poems. These are unpublished poems, and I'm working on this collection, and they're of a mystical nature, and again connected to the experience I mentioned earlier. Who can map the journey leads from catastrophe to God? It is love, the wound of love. To me, it seemed all wounds lead to the wound of love, and the wound of love leads to the wound of Christ. Only that which wounds can heal, like curing like, love curing the wound of love. Is there a human means to cure what the divine fire has made sick? What consolation in the thought that the Lord cannot betray me, only I can betray the Lord. I opened myself to such a love, and the wound swelled into the world that was finally home. The next poem is also from the same phase. This is not the music of words, but the jagged rhythms of the universal complaint. This is not an image, but flesh fallen into words. This is not a poem, but a life that had to be partly lived on a page. There are many more reasons that poems are made. Because children are not made. Because burning hearts fall into your embrace. Because absences cannot be endured. Because epics are left unfinished. Because time cannot be redeemed. Because love doesn't last as long as it should. Because my country, my world is dying. Because memory is a burden. Because desire is a blessing and a curse. Because pleasure feels like pain. Because infinite and endless is my longing that even you, Lord, cannot contain me.